What is up, everybody, and welcome back for another great episode of Jesse's Drone Adventures. Today, I got something really special for you guys. In fact, it's something so special that we actually had to leave the Southwest and travel out to the Midwest to check out a very iconic town when it comes to rock and roll history. The town is called Clear Lake, and it's located in northern Iowa, and it's very significant because this historic town holds a very tragic story about the 1959 Winter Dance Party tour at the Surf Ballroom, which, of course, held performances by Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper. I'm talking about the day the music died. And in this video, I'm going to give you guys a tour of the ballroom where they had their last performance, drive out to the crash site, and give you a little bit of background info on the artists and talk about the events that led up to that fateful night. Stay tuned. In the late 1950s, rock and roll was emerging, and coming onto the scene were three young, talented musicians with promising futures in rock and roll. Buddy Holly, out of Lubbock, Texas, with hit songs such as That'll Be the Day, Peggy Sue, and Oh Boy. Ritchie Valens, out of the San Fernando Valley area in California, stealing the spotlight with hits such as Come On Let's Go, Donna, and La Bamba. And last but not least, J.P. Richardson, known famously as the Big Bopper, electrifying stages with hits such as Chantilly Lace and White Lightning. All artists were in the early stages of their music careers and getting ready to take them to new heights, until one night on February 3rd, 1959, they all boarded a plane that was set to take them from Clear Lake, Iowa, to their show the very next night in Moorhead, Minnesota. But they never arrived. Shortly before 1 a.m., their plane took off and went about 5 miles before crashing in a cornfield. There lay the bodies of Buddy Holly, 22, Ritchie Valens, 17, the Big Bopper, 28, and pilot Roger Peterson, 21. Now, let's rewind back to the beginning of the Winter Dance Party tour here for a second to kind of give some context on how this thing first started off. First, according to the VH1 documentary Behind the Music, The Day the Music Died, Buddy Holly really didn't want to go on this tour around that time of year, but he did need to make some money as he did have a wife to take care of and a child that was along the way. The Big Bopper, also in search of financial security and with a family to take care of as well, he also jumped on the tour, and it's well worth noting that he really didn't like being away from his family. Ritchie Valens, on the other hand, was pretty enthusiastic about the tour, as he was looking forward to all the other artists that he was going to meet along the way. But it's also worth noting, Ritchie did have a huge fear of flying. Now, right off the bat, you can totally tell this tour had a very hesitant start, but all artists were very determined to make it through the tour, despite the fact that it was a 3-week tour in the heart of the Midwest, in the middle of wintertime. Now, if that doesn't sound bad enough, let's take a look at some of these tour dates here. So, the tour was managed very poorly, and just by looking at some of the stops and the dates on the map, you can tell they zigzag and jump around so much, meaning that after they had played some shows, they would actually end up coming back to similar areas to which they had already played. And in the documentary, The Day the Music Died, that aired on VH1, it was said that it's almost as if someone put up a map on a dartboard and threw darts at it, and where they landed, that's where they played. All these factors together ended up giving the Winter Dance Party tour the nickname, The Tour from Hell, and it's quite obvious why. Now, I wasn't around back then, but I can definitely speak on behalf of the weather, being a Minnesota native. I mean, there's been times it's been so cold here that schools and businesses closed down, and not even because of the snow, just because it's been literally so cold to even be outside. I mean, you know it's bad when even Walmart closes. And if it's not the cold temps that are trying to get to you, it's the many feet of snow that's trying to keep you from going anywhere or stopping you dead in your tracks. Now, of course, cars, trucks, and buses have come a long way since the late 1950s, but I mean, even to this day, driving in your best 4x4 in those brutally cold temps, and to have the snow come down on you so thick and fast that your wipers barely have enough time to go back and forth to brush all the snow off, driving down the highway can quickly turn into a life or death decision. Now, along with the freezing cold temps and being jam-packed on the tour buses that continue to break down in the ice cold, after about a week of being on tour, the singers started to succumb to the elements, and all became ill. But that didn't stop them. They had a show to play and around 1,500 fans to please, and at 8 p.m. on February 2nd, 1959, the curtains parted on stage and the Big Bopper started things off. He played his hit Chantilly Lace and really got the crowd going. Once his set was over with, Ritchie Valens jumped on stage and continued to fire the crowd up even more. The ladies were loving him, couldn't get enough of him. La Bamba really lit up the place. Finally, Buddy Holly took the stage and topped off the night, wowing young teens and really giving them a night to remember. After all, at that time, northeastern Iowa had never seen stars so big. It was a real treat for everyone in attendance. But now, after about a week on being on tour with back-to-back shows, Buddy Holly really had enough of the long, freezing drives, night after night, and really wanted to get ahead to catch a break and get some laundry done. And in fact, February 2nd was supposed to be a day off. It wasn't even on the original lineup as a scheduled date. But the tour manager booked that one last minute and got the show. Now before we move forward, let's recap real quick on how things started off a little bumpy, then proceeded to get worse. All these factors I'm about to explain to you are actually kind of chilling to me, and here's why. First off, it was a hesitant start to begin with. Weather conditions were bad, the performers were exhausted, and started to become ill. And when they thought they had a day off to relax and just take a quick break from being on the road, boom, the next thing they know, they had another show booked. But they did what any great performer would do, and despite everything that went on, they took the stage and had a great night of rock and roll. Now, when they first arrived at the Surf Ballroom, they were all under the impression that once the show was over, they would eventually get back on the cold tour buses and make their way up north. But Holly had other plans. You see, after about a week of being on the tour from hell, a little bit of hope emerged. Buddy Holly was able to charter a plane that would take himself, Ritchie, and the Big Bopper to their next show. I mean, after being subjected to the terrible conditions so far, how could one pass up this opportunity? It's also worth stating that the Big Bopper and Ritchie weren't even supposed to charter the plane at first. It was only supposed to be Buddy Holly and his band. But at the last second, the Big Bopper asked Waylon Jennings for his seat on the plane, and Waylon Jennings said okay. And through another documentary I found online, I was actually able to find out that once Ritchie got word that Holly was chartering a plane, he kept asking if he could get a seat on the plane, despite his fear of flying. But he was repeatedly declined. Only until they were about to leave for the airport, and Tommy Allsup said he would flip a coin with Ritchie to see who gets to go. Ritchie called heads in the air, and heads it was. At that moment, it was decided that all three headliners were set to fly out that night. But little did they know, the final card was drawn in the series of unfortunate events that had continued to go on, and just before 1 a.m. on February 3rd, 1959, the plane, which was a single-engine Beechcraft Bonanza, took off into the night and fell shortly after. Now, the plane was only in the air for a few minutes before it ended up crashing in a cornfield about 5 miles northwest of Clear Lake, Iowa. Reports say the right wing of the aircraft caught the ground first, sending the rest of it tumbling across the ground and ejecting all the rock stars before getting caught up by a fence. The official cause of the crash back then, stated by the FAA, was pilot error, but there are those that do believe different. The plane was discovered at around 9:30 a.m. that morning, and local authorities soon arrived on the scene. You see, the pilot Roger Peterson was expected to make radio contact with Hubert Jerry Dwyer, the owner of Dwyer Flying Services in Mason City, shortly after takeoff. After Dwyer hadn't heard from the pilot, he made several attempts on his own to reach out to him, with no response. So later that morning, Dwyer took off in another airplane and retraced the planned route, and within minutes, the wreckage was found. There on the white frozen ground lay three of the biggest names in rock and roll. The pilot, Roger Peterson, was still inside the aircraft. It's been said that rock and roll died that day, left a music culture in complete shock, and left many others devastated. But the legacy of these musicians still lives on to this very day, and it can be heard in the 1971 hit song, American Pie, by Don McLean. It's a song that commemorates an era of rock and roll that as quickly as it came, it left, and with a very tragic ending. But you can't help but listen to this song and just instantly think about those three musicians and what they left behind. It's almost like a flood of images that come into mind. The story has also been revived in movies such as The Buddy Holly Story, which came out in 1978, featuring Gary Busey, and of course, we can never forget 1987's La Bamba, which featured Lou Diamond Phillips and a modern take on Ritchie Valens' music through the artist Los Lobos. Both are great films, and if you haven't seen them, I would definitely recommend them. Also, every year at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa, there's a show put on in memory of the last stop of the Winter Dance Party tour, and if you're ever in the area or you don't live too far away, you can always stop into the Surf Ballroom for a visit. You can check out the dance floor, the stage, and definitely take a look at the walls, because they're actually covered with hundreds of pictures of other artists that have played there over the years. You can see the phone booth that Ritchie used to call home in. You can even go backstage and check out the area where all the performers waited before they played. It's really cool. And definitely be sure to check out all the pictures that were taken that night. You will find them all scattered throughout the walls of the Surf Ballroom, with other articles of information and the newspaper that was printed too. Aside from the Surf Ballroom, you can also drive out to the crash site. All that sits there to this day is a memorial honoring the three musicians and the pilot. It's pretty easy to get to, and you can pretty much park anywhere alongside of the road. It is about a half a mile walk from the parking area to the monument, but it's an easy walk. You'll know when you're here because you will see Buddy Holly's big glasses at the start of the little trailhead here. Yeah, when the plane was coming down, I do believe the plane came down from this direction, wing hit the ground, and then it cartwheeled all the way into the fence. Now, I'm originally from southern Minnesota, and I have been to the crash site and the Surf Ballroom many times. And many times as a kid, one thing I always thought to myself was, it would be really cool to see what that place looks like when the dance floor is packed and there's actually bands playing there. And on September 30th, 2015, I got my wish. Me and my brother were actually in attendance at the Surf Ballroom because my favorite band of all time, Breakin' Benjamin, was playing. It was super, super awesome. The place was packed and it was really kind of cool to see that place kind of come to life. I really wish I did have some pictures from that night, but unfortunately I don't. While the experience was super awesome, it was still kind of weird at the same time, because it almost felt like you kind of went back in time to see a modern band. But truth be told, anytime you walk into that building, it is like stepping into a time machine.